Ian, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, lovely to be with you, Tom, yeah.
Start by sort of telling our listeners a bit about yourself and what you do.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think I'll start where I went to art college because that was the direction I was taking at the end of school. And of course, one goes to art college and doesn't think too much at the beginning about what you're going to do to actually earn some money at the end of it. So after the art college course, basically I went and trained to be a teacher, an art teacher, and went and taught for a while in the Midlands, but I really didn't enjoy teaching. I enjoyed teaching, but a lot of the job is nothing about teaching. It's about trying to keep control of children.
Oh, don't tell me there's something you need to teach.
Well, these were sort of 11 to 18.
Okay,
I got given the kids that in those days nobody else wanted
don't care
to
about
teach.
art at all.
No, but I did run an art club at lunchtime. And then you had kids come along who really wanted to do things, and that's very rewarding. But it wasn't the way I wanted to spend the rest of my life, really. So after full qualification as a teacher, then we had the chance to move to Woodbridge. And what I did at art college was fabric design and fabric printing, as well as various other subjects one covers. And so I set up a fabric printing studio in Melton, just down the road. It was a primary school, not being used as a primary school at that time, not the new buildings there. And you had big classrooms where you could have a long table and roll out a great piece of fabric and screen print the whole thing. So we were screen printing my own furnishing fabric designs and selling them through people like Liberties and Heels and small interior design shops. But I wasn't a great businessman, and a lot of the people kept you waiting sort of 6 months to get paid. So it wasn't so successful as a business. But one thing we did do which was successful was we printed tea towels. And I kind of, as an artist, turned my nose up at that side of the work, but it was actually what used to make us more money than anything else. So I did the first tea towels of Woodbridge Tide Mill, and other big sort of country houses and things like that. And it was fairly unsophisticated means of manufacturers. I roll out a great length of linen, print all the tea towels, chop them up, seam them up myself. Then we take them down to the tumble dryer in the thoroughfare in Woodbridge, chuck the whole lot in. People looking at you like you're crazy, 40 tea towels going into a tumble dryer, but that was the way to cure them. And we could have made money at that, but I didn't fancy doing that the rest of my life either, really. So from that I got the chance to go and work for somebody who said he was going to make me very rich. It didn't quite work out that way. Working on big houses throughout the UK, in charge of all the furnishing fabrics and working with some very fine materials and that kind of thing. Which was a great job and great experience. Certainly took me into a different world of life to anything that I had seen, and the chance to also visit some of those wonderful old manufacturers who were printing much in the same way as William Morris had, sort of woodblock prints. So it was a great experience, but it only lasted about 2 years. And when that came to an end, I was casting around for what to do next, and I saw an advert in the East Anglian or whatever it would have been at the time that said that a Suffolk company had got the project to build the interiors for the Sultan of Brunei's palace in Brunei. And I got the work for them, which was basically to coordinate all the craftsmen, because we had gold leafers, wood carvers, every kind of trade you can imagine and skill working on that. And so I worked for quite a while on that project, and in the end went out to Brunei and saw the palace interior installed, which was amazing really.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can imagine, we were creating this throne canopy where the Sultan of Brunei sits, and his thrones and all the fancy decoration in an old barn out near Needham Market.
Yeah.
And so when it came to loading the stuff onto the container in the middle of the night, the farm where it was being constructed, the idea was we built everything in the UK, shipped it kit style to Brunei, and there they reassembled it. So the farm at the same time had a caravan meet where they all dressed up in country and western costumes. So you've got this bizarre scene of all this gold and lacquered thrones and pieces for the Sultan of Brunei going out of the barn, and people pouring in, wearing their Wild West
So
gear.
it's fair to say art college took you a few places.
Yeah, it takes you all over the place. I mean, careers advisors at school have no idea really what possibilities there are. You know, they do their best, but they channel you to certain standard things.
Yeah.
But really, the result of life takes you many different.
That's the thing.
Different
You never know what's
places.
going to happen.
No.
What's going to happen next? Was it quite a transformational period, that art college era of your life?
Yeah, it was really. It was wasn't what I expected to be doing at the end of school, but it was in the end. It was a whole new world to me, and once I was in it, I knew that was what I had to be connected with, really. And yeah, there were various other ways I could have gone, but I'm glad the way things turned out. Almost accidental, really. That took me
It's
in
often
that
the way it is,
direction.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Throughout your whole life, you've been a poet, haven't you? So can you tell us a bit
I have,
about
I started writing poetry at school, got a couple of poems published, and I was really, for me, coming from South Wales, the poet that I heard and knew most of was Dylan Thomas, who'd actually died a year before I was born. But we used to have the old LP records of him reading his poetry.
Oh, really? Okay.
And just the sound of his voice and the way he read his work, and knowing the landscape and the people that he grew up amongst.
So you're listening to it, not just reading it from a very early
Mostly
age.
I was listening to it. I mean, at school, I then got all the books and all the short stories, which are wonderful, and read them as well. But initially it was hearing him reading his work. And for me, poetry is like that. It is very much something that you hear. Not that I don't appreciate poetry written, but for me it has to have a sound quality as well, almost like music, really, a form of music.
Yeah, sure. Well, do you think there's like a public interest in live poetry?
There
You do a
is.
lot of shows, don't you?
Well, there is, and I don't do so much at the moment, but there is a huge interest amongst young people in the spoken word, and it's something that's come back. It's not quite the poetry that I perform and read, but nonetheless, it excites people, and every age should have its own form of poetry, and enjoy that. Yeah, so I think it's really come back considerably over the last few years.
Is it more impactful to hear it live, do you think? Are you like quite a strong advocate of hearing it live
I
instead
think
of just
so.
reading it?
Yeah, definitely it has a theatrical requirement as well, I think.
Oh, so when you're doing your show, which is called Singing in My Chains, isn't it? Is there a theatrical element to that?
Oh yes, very very much so. I mean, I read individual poems, but also the short stories are wonderful, and they've got lots of different characters. And because I know the people and I know the local accents, as it were, then I know how to perform it, and it is a piece of entertainment as well as hopefully instructional. Yeah,
that's an interesting way of viewing it, actually. So, tell us about Singing in My Chains. It's quite an interesting, powerful phrase, isn't it? Where did that come from?
Well, one of Dylan's very best known poems is called Fern Hill, which is about the farm that his grandparents had in Carmarthenshire, and it meant a lot to Dylan. He spent a lot of time there in his youth visiting them. But really the poem is about, as a lot of poems are, the passing of time, and you just can't capture those times. And looking back at his youth and realizing how, whilst he was kind of following his heedless ways, time was going by, and it was sort of life was passing in the
A lot of Shakespeare's poems sonnets are like that, aren't they? Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's quite a few that are.
Yeah, indeed. It's there in so much poetry. I mean, Fernhill begins, as I was young and easy under the apple boughs, about the lilting house, and happy as the grass was green, the sky above the dingle starry. Time let me hail and ride, something along those lines. Anyway.
So why did Dylan Thomas resonate so much with you? Was it just that you happened to discover him first?
Well, I think really to understand what it is about him, you have to listen to his voice reading, because it's something quite different. Well, a lot of poets had their own particular style of reading.
Yeah.
But coming from a Welsh tradition of sort of chapel. Of the chapel and sermons, and there's something very powerful about it.
Yeah.
So would you say it comes across different hearing how the authors said it themselves than if you were to read it? Their tone and everything makes
Well,
difference.
I think you need to hear. People say, well, you shouldn't worry about how he read it, but I think there's so much of the way he performed it that adds to it, that you can read it in any way you like.
Like it's considered.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Is it true that Bob Dylan took his name from
Well,
Dylan Thomas?
It has been said, and it is unusual that Bob Dylan should have taken the name Dylan. I think Bob Dylan has actually denied it at some point.
Right.
However, it was one of these names that was in the air for example, the Beatles on their one of their albums, there's Dylan Thomas in with the whole on the Sgt. Pepper album. Yeah, you will spot Dylan Thomas in there along with a whole load of other people. And Dylan Thomas was somebody who did influence a lot of people of that generation. In the music world, a lot of musicians will tell you, oh yes, Dylan Thomas, we really...
Is that because his poems are quite like lyrical and song-like?
I think so, they're very musical.
I mean, Bob Dylan denies a lot of things, doesn't he? He's like, never listen to poetry, absolutely hates it.
Absolutely, he'll say anything,
Okay, you also sort of tackle some trickier work, so like Milton's Paradise Lost, which is notoriously a very, very...
How do you know about that? Yeah. Okay, Well, here in just up the road in Woodbridge, we go to a poetry group and we meet once a month there. And Fred, who runs that, had the idea that we would tackle Paradise Lost. Now, if you've seen the size of Paradise Lost, that is quite a challenge to take on. And I'm not sure that, I think enthusiasm waned after about the third or fourth book.
That's what I was going to say. It's like, how do you approach and like convey that to an audience? A piece that difficult?
Well, it's again powerful poetry, and it doesn't maintain the same power all the way through. But there are parts of it that are most memorable. And it starts of man's first disobedience, and the fruit of that forbidden tree whose mortal taste brought death into the world, and all our woe with loss of Eden. Till one greater man restore us and regain the blissful seat, sing heavenly muse, and so it's powerful stuff. Yeah.
How long is it?
Oh gosh, I can't tell you. It's incredibly long-winded, but there are various sections of it that sort of rise above the rest. But it's an amazing narrative altogether. Yeah,
looks very tricky. I looked at it once. I was like, nope, not again.
No.
As a songwriter, I've tried to study some of these poets to develop a bit of sort of lyricism. But what would you say to someone that wants to become a poet? How would they go about writing their own poetry?
Well, it must come from within, I think, and there are people who say, well, I sit down and write a poem every day. I can't go along with that quite, but maybe that's a good way, as long as you're willing to put a lot of it aside, and then a few will
well, as in a very structured approach to creativity, you can write song then.
I was going to say, people say that about writing songs, I don't know.
Yeah.
Some people say they just think of it in the car.
But sometimes, I've written some very long poems. One long poem I wrote, imagining that we have Sutton Hoo here, and imagining that Radwold had a wife, and she tells her story. And so I wrote this huge poem, and I just wrote it from beginning to end, and there's hardly any editing on it. I wrote another slightly humorous poem about life as a student, which maybe you would find very common chords with, where living in Wales as a student, and basically life in a shed, a student house. And again, that I pretty much wrote from beginning to end. And so to anyone wanting to write poetry, well, you have it in you, but don't imagine that it is something about, I'm going to write a sonnet, or I'm going to write this particular form of poetry, because form is great and it can help certain poetry, but it's not the essential.
So are you saying it almost like sort of stream of consciousness, right?
Put it down like that, and then if it starts to find its own form or suit a particular form of poetry, then great.
I guess you've also got to read a lot of poetry to become a poet. You've got to, at the same time, you've got to know all those forms. Do you think?
Well, I don't think a lot of justice is done to poetry at school by people teaching poetry, because I think unless the teacher has a real feeling for it, it can come out over as a very, and the same goes for pretty much everything. But a lot of people say, "Oh no, poetry at school. I don't want to go there again." But I think that an inspirational teacher, whatever subject, is important.
What a shame, isn't it? Really, because that is the general approach at schools.
That is true.
Poetry, not again.
Well, at one time,
GCSEs, didn't you?
At one time, as part of, because I was for a while chairman of Suffolk Poetry Society, and Suffolk Poetry Society still goes extremely well. And we had a mission to go into various schools in Woodbridge and around Suffolk, and working with junior schools actually. And my goodness, the enthusiasm at that age, once you got them going, was amazing. So it's such a shame that they should lose interest later on, because young children, it starts with the playground rhymes, really, rhyming language, and it all, it makes immediate sense to them. They love the sound of words, and so we did that with various schools, and there was one school in Ipswich. We did a sort of first go, and then they were meant to go out to their break and then come back. They didn't want to go out to the break; they just wanted to keep going on the poetry. It was very rewarding.
Interesting. One more question on poetry. Do you think it has become slightly less relevant? Like 100 years ago, was it more? Like, were people doing it more often? And was it more important?
Going back and back. If you go to pre-written times, then poetry was the way information got passed on, that sort of moral tales got passed on. And one of the things I loved at school, and many people didn't, but we did Chaucer, and that language is so beautiful and it flows, and you don't really, I learned large parts of it by heart, and it flows so naturally that you didn't need to know what was coming next, because each line kind of prompts the next. And of course, these were tales that would be told if you were going on a pilgrimage to Canterbury or to West Wales or whatever, someone who could tell a story along the way was. But before that, again, it was the way that history got passed down through poetry. So it goes back a long, long way before being written. The written word came to be important.
Interesting. So, as well as your sort of poetry and other artistic endeavours, you've also been involved in the music business, haven't you?
Yeah.
Can you just sort of sum that up?
Well, things come along, and so my wife worked. My brother-in-law, my wife's sister's husband, is the singer Donovan, who was extremely famous during the 60s, but still is going today. And this year, in fact, is celebrating, because he started at the age of 17, which is quite extraordinary, really. Had his big hits. And so this year he's celebrating his 60th anniversary in the music business from the time he was just 17, as I say, starting off.
Did he go, that first song, was it incredible? Or was it no,
it was wonderful. I mean, it was brilliant.
This was incredible talent.
Yeah, incredible talent from the beginning. And he and his mate, Gypsy Dave, they really sort of lived the bohemian poet lifestyle, sort of dossing around Britain, dancing dives with their guitar, playing wherever they could along the way. And so he is married to my wife's sister Linda, and my wife Carol has worked for him. She worked for him in various ways, mostly looking after in a kind of management way, but it went beyond the music side. It went to sort of whole family arrangements, and so associated with that, I have done tours with Donovan around the UK, around USA, in Scandinavia, and
what were you specifically doing on those?
Well,
tours?
actually, I managed to go along as selling the merchandise
amazing.
Which was great.
Fun.
And it's one of those things going on tour that it's kind of addictive. When you do it, you think, oh God, when will it end? And as soon as it ended, you think, when am I going again? It was great, and we were selling T-shirts and albums and things, and you get to meet people all over the country. But it's that roadie thing of you arrive sort of mid-afternoon in a place, you set up, the gig is in the evening, you finish about 1 o'clock, back to your hotel. First thing next morning, you're moving on to somewhere.
I was going to say it's a good way to travel around, but did you actually get to see many places?
No, you don't get to see.
You're in a venue, you're out.
It's like Premier Inn or whatever, and you're in and out, and you don't. But it is good fun.
Yeah. I guess, can you tell us a bit about Donovan's influence on other artists? Is it predominantly folk artists he's influenced?
I don't know about his influence on other artists, really. I mean, a lot of people will tell you, oh yeah, Donovan, I learned to play the guitar because he is incredibly talented on the guitar. And I think there were even perhaps sort of learn to play the guitar books that used some of his songs as a kind of learning mechanism for that. So I think a lot of people have his music in their learning of music themselves. And lots of people in the music business will say, oh yeah, he was a big influence on my musical career.
Do you know what he's working on currently, and what sort of styles, and an album maybe? Or?
Well, I think at the moment he's just getting ready for a gig that will be later this year, which it will be to celebrate his 60. He's just had a show in Paris, and he's just had a show in Italy to do with his 60th anniversary. I mean, he's now what is he now? 78, I think.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Still going.
That's
he's still
impressive.
going, yeah.
Just to finish off today, can you sort of recommend us one or two poems that you think our listeners should read?
Okay. Well, from Dylan Thomas's work, I would recommend Fern Hill, and I would recommend A Poem in October, which are both beautiful sounding lyrical poems. I would also recommend the beginning of Under Milk Wood, which is one of the best introductions to any play that I can think of, really. And a totally different poet, known for other things than his poetry, but is D.H. Lawrence, and for example his poem The Snake, which is a very thoughtful and wise poem, I think.
Great, thank you so much. Well, thank you for
All right.
talking to us
Well,
today.
thank
It's
you,
been really
Tom.
interesting.
Thank you.
Okay.